Welcome back to the Wellness Growth Show. Today's guest is Ken Brickley, CEO of MacroActive, a platform that helps coaches and creators turn their expertise into systems that can actually scale. MacroActive sits at the intersection of content, behavior change, and retention. Ken has a unique vantage point because he can see what works across thousands of coaching businesses, not just one. In this episode, we're going to talk about what really drives retention, why showing up matters more than hacks, how simple funnels often outperform overbuilt ones, and what founders can learn about content, customer experience, and partnerships when they want to grow without losing control. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so Ken, I want to keep this useful, not just for coaches, but founders and operators in general. So we'll keep pulling the lessons up a level as we go.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Okay. So for someone new to MacroActive, what do you do? Who do you
Yep.
serve? And what problem do you solve?
So MacroActive is a platform for fitness and wellness businesses where we turn their expertise into a scalable premium coaching product without losing that personal connection that makes a brand valuable in the first place. And we serve coaches, creators, so people with audiences online, and performance brands who already have established credibility in their space. They have demand established, and we work with those who have the demand, but they've reached a point where they're kind of stuck delivering maybe PDFs, or they have a number of patchwork tools that they stitch together, or they're using some type of software that was really built for coaches at the gym serving one-on-one relationships where they end up running out of hours in a day. So MacroActive allows these coaches and creators to scale to an unlimited number of customers while still keeping that sense of real one-on-one experience.
Okay. So when someone first lands on MacroActive, what are they typically struggling with?
Yeah, they're usually running out of hours in a day, or they're scared to launch because they know that they have such a large audience that when they post about it, there's going to be a lot of demand, and so. Yeah, those are the sort of the two most common. Probably maybe a third is that a third group of people is they already have program out there, but they know that the quality is subpar. Maybe they have just static PDFs that they know they're being shared around among lots of clients and they're losing out on revenue. They have somehow scaled their operation by hiring lots of staff, and they're starting to notice quality issues with staff, or they're managing holiday and sick days, and it's starting to affect their brand. And they, wait a minute, I didn't get in this to be a babysitter. I thought I could scale in a smarter way. There must be a smarter way. And so those are usually the initial conversations that we have with people coming to us.
Okay, that gives us context. So let's talk about what tends to break when people try to grow.
Yeah. It's often, almost always, delivery inconsistency, not marketing. And, it's this is, I think, across the board, but founders often assume growth just means more traffic, more ads, more content, and that probably is the case in many examples. But if there isn't a fulfillment system in place that is bedded down, then you're just amplifying and scaling chaos. You think if this is definitely true in the wellness and fitness space, but I see this across the whole entire SaaS industry and even in small businesses. Usually the founder becomes the bottleneck, and it's, customer experience becomes inconsistent, and that usually generally affects retention. And so these are the sort of the things that begin to go wrong as you scale, and more posts, more funnels, more campaigns, don't seem to fix those sorts of things. Real growth is retention, experience, systems, infrastructure.
Okay. So, and that really ties into how people think about what they're actually building. How, if you had to label MacroActive, how should people think about what you've built? Is it an operating system, a delivery platform, a retention engine, or something else?
Yeah, think of it as an operating system plus a team.
Hmm.
Plus a teams, and a team that I might add is highly incentivized to and aligned with the outcomes of those that we work with. So our business model is unique. Boy, going through capital raise and we are not like most software companies in that we really only make money when our clients are successful. And so our profit is aligned with that of our creators. And so it keeps us sharp. It keeps us focused on what matters. Our clients who work with us are not getting, paper cuts of invoices every time they want to talk to us. We are, you mentioned something about in your introduction, we have a unique perspective or vantage point. That vantage point serves everyone inside the circle who works with us, because they get to benefit from, what's working today versus years ago, or what's
Yeah.
not working today versus
Right.
years ago. And those things really matter. Um, I'd also probably, yes, we build an app that's totally white labeled around our creators, but it's just so much more than just an app. Like the app is just, that's the easy part. The hard part is 14 years of data that we've been building and collecting, and we're using that data to roll back into the community. And so sort of like you think about, a Tesla, automated driving operates better now because there's lots of, input going into that model. And MacroActive has been doing this now for 14 years. So that's a distinct advantage that people on the inside get to benefit from.
So, has the way you describe MacroActive changed as the business matured?
Um, yeah, maybe. I think we've always called it a platform, and I think we've definitely are leaning more into the service and coaching than we ever have, because we're finding that the difference between those who are making 7 figures a year and those who are making 5 figures a year is coachability, consistency, and speed of execution. And that coachability, sometimes we're really kind of performance psychologists more than anything, and trying to, get inside their head, and everyone is different. So it's sort of like going, okay, for you, what's going to get you to have the epiphany that you need to listen to us, and the
Yeah.
next person's a little bit different. So yeah, I think if we changed how
Managing
we,
people.
yeah, yeah, it's understanding the coaches and creators that we work with, and trying to get them to buy into that feedback loop, maybe be a little bit vulnerable, let down their guard. Maybe they don't know everything. Like, this is, and we learn from them just as much, but it's those that are open-minded, um, and willing to try and then execute very quickly. Those are the ones that just are, off the charts, outperforming others.
Love it. I love it. And you've got, like you said, over a decade of examples, probably at this point, too, to when these struggles come up, or this resistance maybe that they might be having with themselves to give you what your team, what you guys need, that you can even help them to overcome that faster, too. Cause you're like, oh, we've seen this. I would think. I'm sure there's always new people, too, and new experiences with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What framing tends to resonate fastest with the right customer?
What framing? Can you expand on that question?
Well, just thinking, even if like you bring somebody on and what helps them to kind of resonate in a way like, okay, I get what it is. I get what you're doing. I get how you can help me.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I suppose it's different for every single person we work with, and I think that's what makes us unique is we're not a chatbot somewhere,
Yeah.
we're not just a kind of a business that is only a software business. We have, I mean, the number changes depending on what time of the year we're at, but often around 100 staff that are um, are making sure that their ideas are incorporated into the product, but most importantly, that we're coaching them to do what's required to succeed. I mean, the frameworks that we use to guide them through that process, yes, I guess it's different for anyone, but we definitely, I mean, the 80-20 rule is always applied, and it just is. I mean, we've had people that sign up and for whatever reason, gosh, you'd think that, you do all of this work, they would want to go live, but they never go live.
Mm.
And, it's like, what do you do? But those who execute quickly or right onto it, who are, passionate about who they serve, I think is a key one is, those are the ones that we love working with.
Sure.
And then financially everyone's rewarded because if they care, they generally show up for the clients and their business grows.
What's maybe a red flag that tells you someone is building the wrong?
Chasing trends, over focused on the money, over focused on building large, complicated funnels. Yeah, focused on all sorts of things except their customer and the persona and the profile of their favorite customer that they love to work with. Like, I mean, you can usually tell, I mean, if they're talking about conversion rates and marketing or advertising spend before launching, yes, a red flag, because they're not focused on who they're serving, and that's getting that right is paramount. Yeah, scaling
Where?
ads. I mean, I gotta read this for you.
Yes,
When we
please.
were talking earlier and you asked me something about like a red flag was, I think I said something about a red flag is when somebody wants to scale ads before actually doing their, organic stuff
Yeah.
first. And
Foundational and organic. Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, usually we really strongly advise people not to spend ads until they have plateaued from their organic content, because it's in that organic phase that you're going to find your voice. You're going to test things. You're going to see what actually begins going viral. And then you want to pour gasoline on those things,
Mm.
but not before that, right? The first time we spoke, you said, oh, it'd be really good to sort of have an example of that. So I found one. I'm not going to
Great.
name names, but I
Okay.
just want to read a piece of an email as an example to your question of sort of, what doesn't work. So this is an actual quote from an email I received like a week ago. I have a lot of brand deals. So he's da 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 da, and then he says, I also have a lot of brand deals that I promote. So most of my content I'm posting is paid by brands. I'd love for you guys to send me your game plan and how I'm going to help get more subscribers. Please do not include any ideas about me posting anything. If you need specific content that I can run for ads, let me know. My app looks great, but other than a few posts I've made, blah, 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 blah. And so it's just like, every time you do a post on behalf of another brand, a little bit of the trust that is established between you and your audience erodes. And if your whole feed is full of brand deal after brand deal, that means that your actual influence is not that powerful. And what is probably happening in this case is, he has tried to promote his own product organically, and and it falls on deaf ears because it's just one of many stuff, and he gets paid by brands whether he sells anything or not. And so it's a really important nuance that I like to try and coach young creators who are growing a profile. Like, man, you know savor the relationship between and that trust. Like, when trust goes up, speed of conversion goes up as well, but when trust falls, there's a great book called The Speed of Trust. Recommend it. And they go through that. And in the creator economy, this is just it is as an underlying foundational lesson that creators need to understand, that they will burn their audience if they do too many of these brand deals. And no matter what kind of ad budget you throw on that, it's just never going to convert because you've burned the audience. Yeah. So there's an example for you.
Yeah, and so those are some red flags, and then those are things it sounds like, to avoid. But if someone wants better retention next week, what is the first thing maybe they should change?
Well, yeah, I've got a good example of that as well. The very best thing that you can do is show up and give a fuck. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
And it really, it's the missing piece. And it can come in any type of format. The more structured and consistent that you can be in planning, your engagement with paid customers, the better. Think about it as like giving them a roadmap. If they know what is in front of them, they stick around. They leave when they don't know what winning looks like. They
Clarity and
People don't leave because they're missing features. They leave because they don't see a path forward, right? And then just showing up, if they can feel that momentum, if they know exactly where they are in the process and there are these next steps and you're showing up, and maybe also you're just surprising them. It's that one line email that that might feel like, wait a minute, I can't scale that. That's unscalable. It's sprinkling the unscalable tasks into a relationship that deepens it and improves retention. It's sending a one-line email saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you post online in a while. Everything okay?
mm,
How's the program going for you?" It's picking up the phone and just calling your client.
yeah.
Hey, hey, I just thought I'd check in. How's it all going? Oh my
Mm.
God, you're calling me? Oh, and
How can we
I mean, I
support
don't know.
you?
I don't know how much time we have here, but I'm going to read a little tiny bit of another text that I got, which is really special in that it's our reason why we do what we do. And I just want to read this. I'm going to decide how much I'm not naming names,
Okay.
but this person said, "Hey, I just want to add from the bottom of my soul, you have changed the trajectory of my life. I've been all in all the programs over the years, even had one that flogged daily enemas as the Holy Grail. Yet not one has shown me how much to eat for me. Not one has worked on my mindset and made me believe I can do it." And she goes on to talk about her backstory, which is just incredibly painful. And I'll save you guys the time, but it's almost like a tearjerker.
Yeah.
And she had reached rock bottom, and she said, "I was basically, at the end of the year, I was in doom, and my family was dysregulated shit show as they fed off of my doom. I was literally waking up, eating like a sparrow, drinking, binging after the kids went to bed, and scrolling on social media like a fiend. But that scroll, well, it found and led me to a post that you made about your program, and you actually rang my phone. I couldn't believe it. My husband said, just do it. It could change your life." And honestly, hand on heart, I'm not looking back. I eat, I walk, I yoga, I even pick up some weights now. I read books, I
Mhm.
listen to audio books. I definitely do not binge. You're changing lives. Sorry for the novel, but I just wanted to share the impact this program has had on me.
I love it. Thank you for
You
sharing
know?
that.
It's
Yeah.
like it's these kind of things that is our why, and,
Yeah.
when we get up and go to work in the morning, we're pretty stoked that we're not only changing people's lives at the front lines, but we're changing creators' lives as well. We're giving them businesses that, allow them to buy houses and, and create families, and yeah, we're excited.
Great. Okay. So think about a lot of founders overbuild funnels. Why
Yeah.
does simple usually outperform complicated? And what do people tend to overcomplicate?
Yeah. Good question. I'll tell you why simple is better because it's faster. Simple. Speed of execution. Let's remember consistency, coachability, speed of execution. Those are the three ingredients common amongst all of those who are seven figures. And simple funnels get to market fast, and then you can build from there. I mean, turning them into complicated up, down, sideways, left, right, all of that kind of stuff is BAU over the years, and yes, you can sort of, get a template of, an up, down, sideways thing from ClickFunnels or whatever piece of software you want to implement, and they all have them. And yet, at the same time, I see these people still get stuck with, some SMS connectivity and this or that. And what am I going to do? And meanwhile, the person with the simple funnel is already off to the races and learning from and improving and iterating on the primary offer, which is we call it framework of like the rule of one. It's just a simple single call to action, one offer, and you iterate on that and you iterate. And yes, absolutely, you're going to add things after that and inject them, but that's business as usual. You're going to split test things. But getting live as fast as possible is my recommendation.
So then when someone starts, why are audience and you already touched on the offer, but offer and ownership more important than just say more content in that first 30 days?
Well, you need to know who you're targeting, and so honing and really spending time on that, your core offer is the most important thing. Unclear positioning, too many choices. These are all things that kind of muddy the water. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question properly, but those are things that what was the question again? Sorry.
So yeah, we can skip on that, but I,
Well, no,
I'll
no,
cut
I
that
wanna
part
make sure
out.
I get no, 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 seriously, I wanna make sure I get that. What
Well, just thinking, yeah. So, so when someone starts with MacroActive, why are the audience, the offer, and ownership more important than just more content in the first
Right,
30
right,
days?
right, okay. The audience, the offer, and ownership I'll touch on separately, but getting the audience right first is paramount because you do not want unclear positioning. That is important. Spending time on the audience, getting that audience right, getting all your language to match that audience. We always say, niche, then niche, then niche again. Spent a lot of time with Gary Vee on the road over several years ago, and he was always about niching down. I gotta say, like, yeah, he is preaching the gospel. If you want to go narrow, 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 and then go global with that, and then you're speaking exactly to someone where they're thinking, "Oh my God, he's actually talking to me," And so many people, we see this. The biggest issue that we see when I think creators are better at this than coaches. If you're a creator who's also a coach, they understand this because in order to really scale online, they've realized that they have to be talking to somebody, and that somebody needs to resonate with what they're saying. Coaches, on the other hand, who may have coached in real life and they're trying to pivot online, coaching in real life, you kind of have to be open to work with anybody and everybody because, that's how you're going to pay the rent, and so that that mindset needs to change. So we really, on the first 30 days, we have workshops where we go through this with our clients and really try to get them to understand that the more that they narrow their positioning and speak to a specific audience, there's enough people in the world, you're going to find them
Yeah.
online. Yeah. And,
I
and
love
and
that you
you mentioned ownership as well. Now, ownership is something that most people overlook. And when there's all kinds of platforms out there that you can work with, but the little print taketh away what the big print giveth. Great Bob Dylan quote. And in these contracts that you sign, you need to read the fine print. Our fine print is very pro entrepreneur. When you drive traffic to your platform, you should be driving it to your brand, the email addresses, the telephone numbers, the content that should belong to and be owned by you, not by the software platform that you're operating on top of. And if you're kind of pivoting from the gym, you're not really thinking, in most cases, they're not thinking this could be huge. Creators with larger audiences often are thinking this could be huge. I know how huge this could be. And you only have to look as far as Kaylet Cenas or the Center Fit app. I mean, there are multi-hundred million dollar exits in this space and a myriad of other, 8-figure exits in this space where that just does not happen and will never happen unless you own your platform, unless you own, more importantly, the data. And so
Yeah, it's huge.
that's something we really try and impress upon people
From the
in our
foundation
in a
up, right?
in a
Yeah,
pre-sales environment.
good.
Be sure who you partner with is setting you up for success long term. So it's glad I
Yeah, no,
was able to make
thanks
that
for
point.
covering that.
Thanks for asking the question. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's just people don't talk about it enough. So, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. So, even for founders outside the creator space, there are themes here around trust, consistency, and customer experience. What do you think business owners in general can learn from the creator economy that most of them are still missing?
It's a really good question. Probably that trust compounds faster than tactics. And tension is fragile. Consistency will build equity over time. And you know how I was talking earlier about that currency between an audience and a creator. Well, the same currency exists between a brand. It's fans or its followers or its patrons. And I think having total transparency and a personality in front of that increases retention. And you don't have to look further than large brands these days, like them or not. Elon Musk, is a great example of that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
wish I wish I had somewhere at the tip of my tongue. I have like 5 other examples of that, but I can't think of right now. But
We can
you know,
always add on
uh,
to that later. If there's
yeah,
another time you want to make
no,
another clip or add it
no,
on, that's all right.
but no, seriously, it's you know I remember the first time I saw this in a kind of a B2B space was years and years ago, probably decades ago now, where, it was something like a product like MailChimp or one of those products where I really saw a B2B product being marketed as a consumer product. They're using consumer marketing, but they were sort of sliding in the back door of these large organizations. And what used to get sort of signed off on was sneaking in and becoming kind of like this from the inside out operational, products. And I thought, wow, it's quite interesting to understand that customer journey and realize that, buyers are people, whether or not they're, you're selling B2B or you're selling to consumers, you're selling to people, and that personality, that transparency, you know, people will always buy from people, and it's definitely the thing that we've seen, the trend, the macro trend that we've seen over 14 years in this industry, is every year tend to see the same thing more and more so. And yeah, you can get the answer to just about anything on GPT now, but you could also sort of get the answer to anything on YouTube before that. It just required watching a
A
little
little
bit
how
more,
to.
and yet people still buy from people, right? And so yeah, and it's because of that connection. It's
Some that
because
say that
yeah,
connection they make.
yeah.
Yeah. Ken, this is a great conversation. What really stood out here is that growth usually doesn't break because people lack ambition. It breaks because they overcomplicate the path, they lose that consistency, or they build without the right systems underneath them. So I appreciate you coming on.
And
Uh-huh.
I would just add to that, they are not obsessive about their customer.
You
That's
have to
where
be
that's
obsessed with your customer.
be obsessed with the customer. I like to say, like get to know your customer or your profile customer so well. Uh, and this goes for any executive or any founder in any industry. Go on a road trip with your customer. A1 will be, you know, putting on a show for you. But by day 3, you're hearing them swear and cuss their phone, and,
What's life like?
what life's like, and it's in that space, it's in that ethnographic kind of examination of how they're actually living and struggling that you find out what your offer really should be. All of our executives have traveled with our clients, for example, and it's in doing that you really begin to understand them and what their pain is.
I really appreciate you coming on and
Thank you.
sharing a
Thank you for having
perspective.
me.
Yeah, just sharing this perspective that applies far beyond just the creator economy. Everyone who's listening, if you've got value from the episode, make sure you subscribe, share it with someone building in the health and wellness. See you in the next episode of the Wellness Growth Show. Thanks again,
If
Ken.
there's one thing I could leave people with in order to find us and or to discover really where you should be focused on your growth, because there's a lot of, we talked about retention, we talked about content, conversion. If you go to the URL growth.macroactive.com, you'll see a handy little self-assessment that you can take that will allow you to really identify your strong and weak areas, and in order find out where you should really be focusing your time. And yeah, so hopefully that is helpful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.